a pleasure to be in the same university where I did my first degree. It's always nice to be back. I wish I had come sooner. Now, what I want to hopefully cover today is a brief overview of the cybersecurity issues that the businesses of the world face today. I'm also trying to make sure that I highlight the skill gaps that we have in the industry as of today, even in the Western world, so that we all can understand what are the good careers that you might want to pick up on when you go home and finish your engineering. Now, I would like to have this discussion as interactive as possible, so feel free to say whatever you would want to say. It's not going to be a one-way lecture because I'm sure we all remember how boring that was. So let's all go ahead and participate if possible. Now, these are the topics that I'm going to be covering. The first one is, what are the cyber threats across the world? Then I will try and highlight my favorite topic, cyber risks in the future smart cities. Unfortunately, the cyber security teams are definitely working on the cyber security issues, but the smart city teams are working slightly, I would say there is a slight gap between the two, because the smart city people are more interested in developing the city as a whole, and the cyber security issues need to be integrated with the smart city, and that's what I'm trying to work towards in my role right now. The third one we would be various approaches to cybersecurity, and then I will just summarize everything. What I'm not going to cover is, please don't come and ask me, there is a cyber attack or there's a virus in my computer, how do I take it out? I don't do that, sorry. What I'm trying to convey to people is that cybersecurity is a lot more than virus attacks and a lot more than computer science. And that's where I have made sure that I hold this discussion in a mechanical engineering department rather than computer science department. So let's just go around the room and try and figure out if anyone wants to say anything about cyber threats. I'm sure you've heard a lot. So many cyber attacks happening on a daily basis. So would you want to highlight any one of them? Anybody? Go on. Anything in news that you would have heard about cyber attack? Phishing attack. Great. Any other attack? I mean, I'm not asking for technical. You can also say Mary Twitter was hacked. I don't care. Just give me some examples.
Ransomware.
Ransomware? Yes. Sorry? Facebook data leak. Yes. The most talked about is Cambridge Analytica and Facebook leak. Yes. Sorry, I can't hear you. Other leak, yes. Any other? DDoS attack, distributed denial of service, yes. Okay, so you've given me quite a few examples, and what I'm trying to highlight now is what is the impact of these attacks. It's good that we all know about phishing, and spear phishing nowadays is much more prevalent. Spear phishing meaning targeted social engineering related attacks. Now, if you look at the few attacks across the world, I have put one more here over and above what you have said. So, the first one on the top, WannaCry, that was a very, very rude wake-up call for UK, because when that virus hacked the hospital systems of UK, they had to cancel many, many operations. I am not talking about the statistics, it's thousands, but we had to shut down a lot of hospitals. A lot of emergency operations got cancelled because the hospital computer systems were just not available. So they had to pay ransom. A lot of NHS trusts also paid the ransom. Although there were campaigns going on that please don't pay ransom. Why do you think we shouldn't pay ransom if we are asked? Because give them $250 or something and your computer is working all over again. Why should we not just pay ransom? Anyone? Okay, I'll give the answer. They will get into a habit of asking for ransom. And there will be more and more ransomware attacks. So we have to stop that somehow. So WannaCry is one of the biggest one. Vehicle cybersecurity is something most being talked about nowadays because of the autonomous cars coming up. Because anybody can hack into a driverless car and possibly kidnap the person, or maybe just put 3 or 4 cars and just ram them into the crowds. They could do a lot of things. So that's something, imaginary scenarios right now, because we don't have driverless cars in UK as of today. They are all observed by the driver. The Atlanta attack was more about the water supply. The Petya virus, does anybody know anything about Petya? And why is it so important? Okay, so Petya, where does the name come from? The name comes from a 1995 James Bond film. There was a satellite called Petya which was doing sinister things in the plot. And this particular name was borrowed from Petya, and Petya used to be a ransomware, so it was a very prevalent ransomware in those days. In 2016, this virus attacked the Ukraine's power grid. 6 hours there was no power in the major part of the country. And no power has huge implications on the national economy. And that was considered to be one of the first attacks on infrastructure of the country. So all the examples that you gave me were all about attacks on a software. This particular virus shook up the world because it was attacking the power grids, the actual physical infrastructure, the most essential service for Ukraine was attacked. Now, of course, the virus was not exactly Petya. It was slightly different, so some people call it not Petya. A great name. I mean, they should come to Indian government to find good names, but they call it not Petya. No. And then, of course, somebody a 14-year-old took a tram for a joyride. They just hacked into a tram and just took it around the city. And that's where people realized that it's so easy to hack into all this. Now, 2019, Norway is coming up with driverless cargo ships. Now, when you have a driverless cargo ships, the ship is completely going to transform itself because you don't need people, you don't need the cabins, you don't need the crew, you don't need the canteen. So that's completely going to change the shape of a cargo ship. And when that gets hacked, you could do anything with it. Because there could be oil rig platforms, there could be so many things associated with a cargo ship. Let's just go through this particular video, which explains. This is the latest report, which has come out of UK. My lecture will be a little more associated to UK because I come from UK. Okay.
By the National Cybersecurity Centre and National Crime Agency delivers one clear message. In our new connected world, everyone is a potential target. From 5.7 million businesses across the UK, 4,100 companies to one-man bands. From Britain's banks and utilities to the military, the public sector, and on into Parliament. With our growing dependence on digital communication and smart technology, the UK is increasingly exposed to the threat of global cybercrime. 12th of May 2017, WannaCry, one self-replicating worm connected with 300,000 computers in 150 countries. Data was encrypted, and the cyber gangs demanded a ransom of $300. The true cost for business is far higher. Huge disruption, financial losses, reputational damage. Over a third of all trusts were disrupted. 6,900 appointments were cancelled. Data is now a valuable target. Uber paid hackers $100,000 to destroy names, phone numbers, and email addresses
So this was the WannaCry attack explained properly. It came in 2017 and caused a lot of damage. Now we are not seeing this movie. I'll move on. What happened to the... So what I wanted to highlight here is that we are all talking about data and information loss when we talk about cybersecurity. I want to take it a step further and I want to talk about cyber physical security. Now, as I said, the difference between cybersecurity and cyber physical security is that cybersecurity protects the hardware, software, and the networks. Whereas when we talk about physical security, it is about protecting all the physical systems. So think of the autonomous car which is coming up. If somebody hacks the car, then they have these sensors and the controllers inside the car which could be manipulated by someone sitting far away in Philippines or any other country, and they could actually cause a lot of damage. And that's the kind of cyber physical security that needs a very, what should I say, people want to attend to it immediately because it's become a key part of the cyber arms race. Now, the Petya virus people say that it was created by Russia, and that's why now almost more than 30 countries in the world are now developing cyber physical capabilities to defend as well as to attack other countries, because the cyber warfare has already begun. The key differentiation between cyber and cyber physical comes from the fact that cyber security is about information technology, whereas cyber physical security is about operational technology. Now, what is information technology? Most of you know that. It's about something like a cloud service provider failure or a financial theft through online systems, or it is about a malware which has been introduced. If your computer is overheating and not working properly, there are chances that somebody is mining a cryptocurrency called Monero on it without your knowledge. So there are so many such instances that could be categorized under information technology. When it comes to operational technology, this is where the engineers come in from other branches, not just the IT professionals. So let's understand what do we mean by operations. Every company, most of the companies who develop products and put them on sale have operations departments. Software companies have operations departments. So you develop a driverless car. That is the design stage. You are actually making something, but when it goes on the roads, it needs to be operating during its warranty period or after the warranty period in a safe and secure manner. And that is the department of the people who are taking it on the roads. So that's the operational, and that involves a lot of technologies here. So if you have some, say for example, US power generation grid, there was a blackout in New York, if you remember. So that's something to do with the operation of the power plant. So the technology is used to operate and distribute the power. There was a fault in there. So that kind of technology, and I'll explain more when we go on the next slide, but oil rigs, chemical plants, all these operations could be hacked into now because they are getting connected to the internet. The components within those plants are now becoming electronic. As long as it's electronic, it's fine, but it's also going into internet. Not only is it going to internet, it is also getting connected elsewhere. So you must have heard that a thermostat, if you have, can be hacked into to hack the some big components within a plant. So why do organizations now care about cyber risk? Cyber security has been a problem for years. It's nothing new. I think 1960s or 70s there was a film called Italian Job where somebody had hacked into the traffic signal. Somebody has seen it. You are too young to see that movie. I don't understand how you are saying yes. Okay. So basically we have. Why now? And that's the answer which I already said, because cyber physical threats is becoming more important. So when you look at different threats and vulnerabilities, now I hope you understand the word vulnerability. It's about your weakness. Now, if you see, there are legacy systems everywhere. So the power, if you go to Ahmedabad power station, I don't know when I had been there last, but there are boilers which belong to the era when British people ruled India. So if you look at those systems and the softwares, they are age-old softwares. Every day when a new vulnerability is discovered in a software given out by Microsoft or whichever other company, they send a patch. So that when the patch is uploaded by you, then that vulnerability is gone. However, the problem with the legacy systems, that is from the age-old systems, is that people don't know how it works anymore. It works, that's all they know, so they don't want to touch it. That if I put a patch on it, it might stop working, which will be millions of dollars worth of problems. And these systems are not just in Ahmedabad, they're everywhere. All over the world, there are legacy systems. And we are trying to superimpose this high-tech solutions on top of those legacy systems, which is definitely not a way out for anybody. Replacing those legacy systems takes a huge budget, and no one can spend that kind of amount that easily. So basically, there are systems from 1980s, even in UK, rail areas, yes, some rail sector, and people are scared to patch it up or do anything about it. So that is a vulnerability for everybody that can be exploited. Darknet provides. Does everybody know what's a darknet?
Playing.
Sorry?
In particular game, one is involved and it will lead to a crime.
Huh. So it will lead to crime and it is not available on internet. Okay.
It is one kind of other kind of internet. It is
Other kind of internet, yes. So it is like we have our underground crime, it's the underground crime on internet, except that it is on a Tor browser, Tor. So that's the browser for darknet. And there, they actually have a DIY toolkit for you, do-it-yourself toolkit for you, where you go and they will explain you how to commit a crime, how to do a ransomware. They will provide you all the tools, all the trainings, all the guidance, and provide operational support all the way for you, for your crime. So that is so easy for people, and it is so cheap. And that's why that threat is very difficult to counter. The next threat is about insiders. Everybody says that cybersecurity is about IT, which I disagree because it's not. Well, frankly, I'm sorry, everybody doesn't say it, but many people still think that. So cybersecurity is also about people, because people work in companies, people access computers, people give access rights to you, people authenticate other people, and something can go wrong with the people who are doing this process. So that could be a disgruntled employee who decides to just give the access to everybody, or there could be people who don't understand how to operate the system and they could make mistakes. Human error is very prevalent nowadays. So the insiders and the culture. So even in the police departments in UK, there are regular cyber hacks happening. People don't even know how many they are. And most of the times, not always, but most of the times, people just accept the risk that we don't know what to do about it. Nothing can be done about it. Hackers hack, and we have to live with it. So there is a lack of awareness sometimes as to how to counter that. And of course, there is a very widespread cyber terrorism now. And state-sponsored attacks is probably the biggest threat right now, because it's now, nobody has the means to do a massive scale of cyber attack, like bringing down the power system of an entire country. And that can only be done by another country. So the state-sponsored attacks is another one. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that organizations care because it's now the problem of the CEO and not just the IT department head. The CEO, the way they look at cyber risk, the kind of things that they implement for their security and look at how the strategic risks are being managed is very important for every single manager of a company. So this cyber risk management has become quite prevalent in organizations now. and it definitely determines the image of the company. So it's very important they manage these risks, because this risk could lead to any of these things that we already talked about. So now my next talk is about the smart cities. Why do we have to care more about cybersecurity when we live in a smart city? And that's what I'm trying to explain in the next slides. I mean, everybody knows what's a smart city. If not, here is the definition. One of the definitions. There are many, many definitions of smart cities, but basically it's about improving the quality of life of the people by providing better services through interconnected infrastructure so that we could gather more and more information. So for example, nowadays in most of the countries in the West, there is these smart parking solutions. So when you say smart parking solution, that means you don't have to look for parking space everywhere. There is always a billboard appearing saying there are only 5 parking spaces here, so there is nothing on this side, so don't go on that side. So we can actually save a lot of time parking. That's another smart solution. And there is smart things going everywhere in every field. It's smart healthcare, smart energy, smart buildings. We know about it, but the 3 main things about it is that smart city is resulting in billions of internet connected devices. So if you remember, I think that was around 7 years ago, I read in newspapers that Dick Cheney, the vice president of US, must be more than 5'7". So he had to be told to remove the pacemaker from his heart because it was connected to Wi-Fi. Anyone can hack and murder himself. That was one of the reasons they were. So it has very, very high impact. The other one is the critical national infrastructure, the infrastructure that provides the hospital care, the infrastructure that provides the energy systems, the water systems, the transport systems. All this essential infrastructure, which is critical to a nation, is now dependent on internet very soon. Definitely that's the case in UK because everything is getting connected. And the last one is day-to-day human life, of course, is dependent on technology because of all this. So we have the Smart Ahmedabad plans. When I looked at that, it almost told a similar story. We are going to have a common command and control center for BRTS and for ANT and for fire control, which will result in real-time CCTV tracking of people, vehicles. So when all this happens from a common control room, it's a single point of failure. You hack into it, you get access to everything. So that's another problem. And that's why the only way out is that we keep monitoring all of this as to how this happens. There's one more video, but I'm not going to show you the full video. Just a glimpse as to when the cities become smart, how is it going to be? How are the people going to manage the city? So this example is for transport. So how will the transport security operations happen? So somebody will be sitting behind the screen, looking at whatever is going on around the railway stations, buses, everywhere, and they will be actually taking action. So that's how the command and control center will look like. So one person is looking at different parts of the city, what's going on. He finds an anomaly, somebody throws an alert, the system throws an alert, and then he goes and looks at live what's going on. So in this particular case, someone's bothering the bus driver. looking for anomalies to throw in different kinds of environment. Actually, the name of this video is What Can Happen in a Day. It looks like a lot. Now, someone at the train station is being scammed. There's a big pickpocket there. Yeah, so the operator just records it, sends it to police, and the police comes and arrests them. So that's how the smart city operations are going to be. Now this video is quite long. I can give you the link later on if you are interested. So in interest of time, I will just move on with the remaining slides. So the main thing to note is that cybersecurity is a battlefield of now. You guys are very, very lucky. You are starting your career just when the digital revolution is at its peak. There is a lot of things happening on a day-to-day basis, and there is a lot that you can get into in the future fields. I'll give you a quick glimpse of all this. Now, if you look at all these smart things which are up on the slides, I'm very much interested in this particular one, smart lampposts, because the smart lamppost is not something that far in the future. That's the easiest solution for the smart city to implement as of today, other than the budgetary issues. Now, when the smart lamppost gets implemented on the streets of London, what's going to happen is that it can hear everything, it can record everything, and it can play back what happened an hour ago or 24 hours ago, and it can zoom onto a person and say, this is the person who was talking that. It can also provide you Wi-Fi, it can provide charging stations for the vehicles, it can give directions to the connected automated vehicles, because the vehicles need to read the road to be able to go further. It is not just about GPS, it's the infrastructure on the road which directs the autonomous vehicles which are coming in nearer to, hopefully, the first ones. And overall, the smart lamppost also sometimes plays music and puts billboards and signs on parking spaces or the events that are happening, maybe tourist information. It also has an SOS button. So you can always press that or call police if you're stuck or call help if there is a crime going on. And there are also other things which are being researched. So for example, if there is a crime happening near the street, if somebody just shoots somebody and the sound of the gun is captured by this lamppost, straight away relayed to the police with the GPS coordinates. And there is just police coming there within 2 to 5 minutes. These kind of advances. So think of what can happen if somebody hacks into all this. That's the biggest problem. My worry is that the smart solutions are great, but what happens when it is not secure? So if you look at the smart signals and autonomous vehicles, I mean, the signals, the zebra crossing are going to be dynamic. I'm going to the transport research lab where they are testing all this right now. It's not that far in the future. So what I'm trying to question is, can we really protect all this? Can we protect the people, the services, the infrastructure from all this kind of problems? It's a battlefield of now. So how do we actually do the cybersecurity? What is the way to do cybersecurity? It is not just an IT thing that we just saw, it is a lot more than just IT solutions. When we put all these things together, it is about securing a service. So, you know what a risk means? Anybody wants to take a dig at what is a risk? Because I explained so much about risk, I want to make sure you know what risk means. Do you want to try?
Anything would be in a problem, either industry or data or...
Yeah? Anybody else? Yeah?
Potential harm.
Potential harm, yes. So risk is a measure of uncertainty, and when we talk about cyber risks, what we are measuring is what is the harm caused. So the risk exposure is equivalent to the harm caused. So higher the exposure, bigger the harm. Now, the way to manage these risks would be to identify first what are the different scenarios under which we could be causing problems. Now, I'm talking only from the crime science perspective because that's my area. So what kind of crimes can be committed when these kind of things are put on the roads? Because frankly, scientists and engineers solve a lot of problems, but they create a lot of them too. Right? So we need to make sure that we are not creating more problems by solving one problem. When we need to analyze these risks, put them into action, and after that we have to continuously monitor it. That's what you saw on that screen. Person was continuously monitoring for anomalies. So cybersecurity is now, in UK at least, a part of national security. I know it is in US as well. It is also in Israel, China. So many countries have merged the cybersecurity into national security. So it's not just about the MI5 where James Bond goes around looking for criminals. It's now done through operators going on internet and trying and collecting intelligence through social engineering or whatever other tips on the darknet. Researchers go there as well. So overall, the national governance of security used to be only police and MI5, MI6 or critical infrastructure protection, but then it has also added on the National Cybersecurity Center to it. That organization was set up in 2016, and National Cybersecurity Center is the authority in UK for cyber crimes or cyber-related guidance. Cybersecurity and cyber-related guidance. So that has a part, and that is, I think, I read PM Modi's vision that in India we want cybersecurity to be a part of national security. So maybe it's coming here soon as well, it depends on the elections, of course. And the other part of the risk management is about building resilience. So, anybody wants to talk about what exactly do we mean by building resilience? Resilience is a little different word from risk. Risk is easier. So I'll just go ahead and explain. Resilience is about making sure that you can actually come back. It's a capacity to recover from a catastrophe. So when a cyber attack happens, now we all know that cyber attack is going to happen. By definition, a risk can never become zero, right? Because there's always a risk out there about anything. So one of our professors, I'm sure that alumni sitting here will tell us that our risk used to be that we may have to attend the full lecture, and even after the attendance is taken. So we had to do a number of different mitigations for that. Some of the guys in our creative people in our group actually would be at the last row, sitting in that room over there, which is 2 doors. And after the attendance is taken, the professor turns around and they remember everything. Look at them. So as soon as the professor turns around, just go from the back door. That used to be the mitigation. So, and then we had a wonderful Professor Basani who eliminated the risk altogether for us by saying, people just come and sign here and then leave if you don't want to attend the lecture. So, so that used to be really nice. So when we say we have to build resilience, it means that you have to plan for failure scenarios. So you just start you just build a product, that's not enough. You build a service, that's not enough. You put operational security, not enough. You have to think of what happens when there is a cyber attack. What happens if there is a flood? So resilience is in all areas. You need to have emergency response and recovery plans ready. And now this has become a regulation in UK, US and other places where you are supposed to make sure that for any critical essential service, you have risk management in place, monitoring for anomalies in place, and emergency response and recovery plans tested. So there is a regular law for it and a regular audit for it. Of course, the audit is yet to start because it has come in 2018 May. My entire research was on this national regulation. So I will not bore you with the details, otherwise I'll go on till night. So let's move on with the next approach. This is the engineer's approach, to my opinion. I call it engineer's approach, but it applies to everybody. You need, whenever you design something, when you go out and design something, make sure that it is designed against crime as well. We look at the availability, the reliability, and all those factors, but we also need to look at what crime can be committed. So I'm not sure if you know about 1990s, but in UK the cars were getting stolen very regularly, and people were getting fed up of it. And there was no way there was no incentive for them to put in more security. So what government started doing is they started naming and shaming certain car companies who are not putting in security measures, started printing the top secure car lists, and that's where the engineers in the automotive industry started building better and better security for the cars. Now, environmental design is more about making sure that the environment is secure. So that you should be feeling safe when you get into that kind of an environment. So make sure that when you are actually typing something on the computer, you don't feel that somebody is going to see this if I'm typing something very sensitive. So there are, in physical world, there are these bomb-resistant windows that are being put in place. So if there is a bomb blast close by, nobody in the building gets affected by it. That's the environmental design. Product design, again, I'll go back to automotive cars. So if you are good engineers and you want to think about how to make the automated car secure, at least the minimum you would do is separate the braking controls from the accelerating controls so that a person who hacks into one doesn't automatically get access to the other one. So that's the kind of thing I say when I mean design against crime. And when we talk about the service design, the example I put here is about the drones, because I saw a lot of drones in marriages recently, so looks like drone is one of the favorite things already. Now, drones, what if drones are used to deliver bombs? Right? It's possible that you can deliver a bomb through the drone and just blow up a whole bridge. And that could be controlled remotely through cyber means. So this is the cyber physical threat that we are talking about. Now, the drones, I met in the transport security seminar I met a PhD candidate who was working on drones, and I asked, what do you do? He said, I have started researching on how do we intercept hostile drones and disable them. That's his PhD topic. So, I mean, people are studying so many things nowadays, and that actually they have simulated a scenario for drone wars and how to make sure that the right kind of drones survive. And that's all an ongoing thing right now. So service design, delivering pizza is a service, and you should be thinking about when you design a service of delivering pizza, how will you deliver it? You want to make sure it's secure. Okay, so coming to the summary. So what we actually discussed here is, I told you the difference between IT and OT. I explained to you that it's not just about cybersecurity for information and data theft. It's also about cyber physical security. We need to make sure that we don't look at cybersecurity just as an IT problem. It is a problem of business, strategy, people, tools, technology, as well as the last thing over here is people, of course, again. So all these together have to be looked at unison to be able to address a cybersecurity problem. So I think, finally, that this batch of early students, if anybody says cybersecurity is IT, you will say no, right? It's not. So it's a complete transformation piece. We have to transform each and every element of this world, not just the IT, because technology alone cannot fight cybersecurity, which is the reason we have got the risk management piece built in as a regulation. Now, we have to be able to monitor anomalies on a regular basis, and we have learned that cyber risk can be eliminated. Now, this whole next slide hopefully is very useful to you. Oh, before that, yes. That's a question for everyone to ponder about. If you saw the Jurassic Park film, everybody? Yes. Yeah, there is a dialogue in there that the illusion is that we are in control. We are not in control. Basically, we built this dinosaur and we thought that we can control them. But that's the illusion. The dinosaur isn't the illusion. And that's what I'm trying to point out, that we are building more and more things which are insecure. We are connecting them everywhere so that we can reach from one place to other on the cyberspace. And how are they going to control it? I don't know. People say they are going to build a new internet. I don't know when will that happen. And these are the few interesting careers. You might want to take a minute to read these kind of careers. So being an engineer, and I've done my mechanical engineering, but I'm a master's in security and crime science, and my research was on cybersecurity national regulation. I found a few gaps in the regulation and I run it past the government and they are happy to incorporate those. So those kind of careers are also available. And if you look at the whole list of things that you could do, specifically the pen testing, penetration testers are very, very much in demand nowadays, which is about being able to penetrate a cyber secure wall of an organization or any other system. So cryptology, and yes, policing is changing now, so there's going to be less and less uniform police standing on London streets. There's going to be more of the people sitting behind the screens. So digital policing is another area that we could build a career in. There is a critical national infrastructure security, telecoms, and yes, cyber insurance is picking up because of all this. You have a few certified courses on the National Cybersecurity website. I am sharing a few links. These degrees are getting certified and rolled out every day now. The few NCSA certified courses in UK are over here. Now I accept that the academia is also lagging behind, just like all government and security institutes, academia is also slightly lagging behind in introducing good cybersecurity and smart solution courses. I'm probably one of the first who has introduced this summer school course in University College London, and that is going to happen from this summer, in 2019 summer. So it's the first course on cyber risk management. I hope people turn up and register from all over the world, and otherwise it's just out there. If there is enough interest, we will conduct it. And I'm more than happy if you guys want to join me on my Facebook group, because I keep putting in lots of material on Facebook and LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to join the groups, ask questions on an ongoing basis, or participate or put some interesting posts. My LinkedIn profile is here if you want to ask me any further questions anytime in future. And I'm also available on an email which I can share later on if anybody is interested again. You could take a look at this if you are interested in the transport security, because I would recommend this field because it's extremely challenging, and this is the buzzword now, because data being the new oil and transport systems being the core of the urban smart cities. Definitely cyber's, this transport security is a very good field right now. You know our Mr. Sundar Pichai, everybody must know, he is the head of the Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. And this was dubbed as a superpower of transportation. Recently, a few years ago, I think Google was split into the Alphabet and remaining Google. And the US-based Mr. Pichai had taken it up, and he has taken it to new heights. So this is something you might want to read. If you want to take the slides and FB and LinkedIn links from here, from my laptop later, I'll be here after the presentation. So that's all about the whole lecture. Thank you very much, but I'm here to answer any questions. If you have any questions, please ask me now, and I can take a few before we just close.
Yep.
So ma'am, as we said, privacy issues are raising in India as well as in the world. So how can you balance the privacy with security?
I think that is the question which has no answer yet. But yes, people are working towards it. For everyone's benefit, the question is how do we balance privacy and security? Interestingly, in the Western countries, especially in UK, two regulations were introduced at the same time. If anybody has heard of GDPR, Global Data Protection Service, and NIS, that is Network and Information Security Regulation. Now, GDPR is about people's data protection, and the NIS is about making sure that if you are hit, it is not only risk management, but it's also about if there is an incident, you have to report it in 72 hours. Now, how can you report all this as well as protect the data? That's one question. The second one is the smart city solutions. What happens in smart cities is that people have to work together collaboratively. So number of cities, number of organizations, they have to work collaboratively and share data. So people are still in the process of working out ways and means on how to share the data. But in the example I showed you about smart lampposts, I think that's the biggest question. Everybody definitely raises concerns about there's a big brother sitting out there looking at us continuously. And that's something everyone has a problem with. And definitely there are ongoing solutions. There is not a 100% solution developed yet. Maybe when you graduate, you can join that kind of a line and we could actually start working towards it, because I have a PhD student colleague of mine who is working exactly on that. He's doing a research on how to protect privacy and maintain security in a smart city. So it's being researched right now. So unless and until, yes, there are ways and means. They could share the data without actually sharing the metadata. You understand what's a metadata? Data about data. So it doesn't tell you whose data this is and what are the different features of that data. So there are ways and means of sharing data in that manner. So definitely it's possible. And this GDPR, it forces people not only to ask for your permission to share your data, but it also we also have a right to tell them to forget my data. So after 2 years, they have to come back and ask me, and if I say I don't want you to keep my data, they cannot keep it. So these kind of regulations are being developed. This is a developing field, so that's all I can say. That I don't think there's a 100% answer yet. But it's a great question. Anyone else? Any other question? Do you feel any of this is applicable to you in any way? Yeah?
If you have watched the movie FNF 6, or 7, they have used the one device which is used to detect anyone from the world using that single device. So is that kind of thing is possible, or that is just a fiction?
Well, I'm sure Osama bin Laden was found like that.
Like essentially, they are using the transport of the cameras and like our cell phones. Indirectly, they are using the data and
Yes.
Detect any person within a 5 to 7 minutes.
Correct. So what you are saying is that the movie showed that you can detect a person within 5 to 7 minutes anywhere across the world. Now I agree that that is something they have shown in movie, but then there are so many things shown in the movie which are happening now. So I wouldn't say that it can't happen. It can definitely happen. It is a possibility. Depends on your digital footprint. I'm sure they can't detect where my grandmother is because she doesn't have a Facebook or a LinkedIn profile where she puts loads of information and pictures on it. Because that is what social engineering is all about. So if you want to find out, that's what police use this technique to find criminals. So whatever you just described. So what they do is they go onto the Facebook, they look at the different networks the criminals have got, and then they try and understand where can they actually puncture, which person they can take out of the network so that most of the network would collapse and the criminal operations would be severely disrupted. So that is one way of doing things. And locating a person through the GPS signal, I think even through satellite is possible. That's what they have done, right? Before as well. But if you have your phone connected, and if you have your locations on, and if you are telling everybody from Facebook that I've landed in Delhi today and I'm going there tomorrow, it's going to be very, very easy for them to go through your friend's network, your network, all these things. I mean, there was an article on how much data we put out there. I don't think we realize that. How much data do we share on the social media? Huge amount of data is being shared and people can put two and two together and even do an ID theft. They can even replace you and clone you. So, yes, it should be a possibility in my opinion.
It's safe to be share more and more things on social media, or it is safe to be apart from that kind of?
Yeah, so it's not just about social media, you're right. Because there are things that make all this data sharing mandatory as well. You have to have an online bank account sometimes, and you have to have some assistance in home office in UK and other places. All our details would be online. And if that gets hacked into, yes, people can find you very easily. So if we are more and more interconnected, then we should be traceable very quickly. Yes. So the way out is just disable your Wi-Fi.
Maybe I can add something that in China, the Chinese government has added some kind of features, and if a person has not paid government tax, that person will be debarred from boarding any bus, any train, any aircraft, any flight. So they are heading towards maintaining controls by tracking the person.
Yes, and that video is on my LinkedIn profile. If you go to my LinkedIn, look at my posts and articles. This one you'll be able to see there, where China has introduced a system where they can track every person wherever they go. And it's acceptable in a communist society. I don't know whether it's acceptable in a democratic one. So yes, people can track you, and I'm very, very happy that my husband, for a change, was listening to my lecture. Yeah, I was so scared he's going to come with a list of questions. Okay. Any other question? Anyone else? Okay. I think then that was a great session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you. Now it's a time to felicitate them by a moment from LDC and LDC, etc. Now I request our HOD, Dr. Shreya Mehta Madam, to give a moment. Please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
For sharing knowledge and interacting with our students.
You're welcome.
She has offered us that she can help in research work also if anybody is going to do the research in this kind of area. So interactive session, or she can advise or give some data or information regarding the related topic on the mail or email or some social media also. So if anybody is interested or would like to interact with her, she is open to, that is our privilege.
Yeah, anyone wants to start a startup, or anyone wants to understand where next to fly to, feel free to contact me, but join my Facebook and LinkedIn groups, and I'll definitely be able to answer on there. And there'll be other experts on there as well. So if I can't answer something, there'll be other people answering. And it's free, there are no commitments on that.